Everyone. I think we're going to get started today. So welcome everybody to the book launch. We're really excited to talk to both the editors as well as the authors for serving Hispanic, Latine, and Latinx students in academic libraries. I'm just going to kick off the webinar by just talking a little bit about my role with the series and then just did sort of the initial, conversations around the book. So if you're not aware, my name is Annie Foe. I use she, her pronouns, and I am currently the head of instruction and outreach at the University of San Francisco, but I'm also a co-editor for the Library Juice Press series on critical race studies and multiculturalism in LAS. And my co-editor, Rose Cho, couldn't be here today, but just to give a little bit of overview, we had started editing this series back in 2016. And the series itself aims to collect and publish works from theoretical, practical, and personal perspectives that critically engage issues of race, ethnicity, cultural diversity, equity in library and information science. So far, we have published 5 books in the series, and we expect 4 more to come out, hopefully within the next couple of years. When we began this conversation about this book with Isabel and Summer about their book project back at the beginning of 2021, which is a very interesting time, for a lot of us. But Rose and I were really excited about their book because it fills a gap in our professional literature, which, I know that there are some publications out there about the experiences of Latinx and Latine library professionals, but to my knowledge, there hasn't been a ton published about specifically serving Latinx and Latine students, especially in academic libraries. And so that's why we felt like this book was such an important contribution. And I've read over all the chapters of the book a couple times, really, and I just feel like this book is really informative. A lot of the chapters are very heartfelt. I could feel that the authors really brought themselves into the work that they do as practitioners, as well as into the writing. And so I know during the pandemic, it was kind of a hard couple years for many of us, but I'm just really excited to see this book take the shape that it's in and really be excited to get to this point where the book is now out and published, and really excited to hear from the editors as well as all of the authors today. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic to Summer and Isabel.
Hello.
Hi.
So I'm going to let Summer start because she's the one that kind of started with this idea and reached out to me with it.
Okay. Um, I am so thrilled that this book is out. I'm happy to be here too with all of you. And everything Annie said, I think she said a couple times, 2021 was really hard. And it's been a long time coming, this book. And I have deep gratitude to Isabel, to our series editors, to all the contributors and authors, to Franco for sticking with it, being patient. We've changed almost, I can't say almost all, but at least half of us have changed jobs. We've moved. We've dealt with some personal crises through this project. So
Some of us had surgeries.
yeah. So just I feel deeply grateful that this is out here. And so yeah, like Annie said, it started way back in 2021. I think even 2020, when I was working at an HSI in Denver, Colorado, and looking around for materials and literature for ideas for programming, and especially for Hispanic and Latine students. And there was nothing. There was tons of stuff in public library land, but nothing specifically for academic libraries. And so I thought maybe there should be something. So I thought of this idea. I reached out to Rhonda down at CSU Pueblo. This is both when Isabel and I were in Colorado. Now we're scattered to the winds. And she suggested I team up with Isabel, and we talked about this book. And it sort of just started from there. She was just as passionate about this, maybe more than me. And we started the process. I had edited a book before. She had not. I actually edited another book for Library Juice. So we pitched it around to several places. Worked on that query letter, did all of our literature review, all of the background here, and Library Juice took it on. It was a great project. We put out that call for proposals and papers a couple times. We knew that we wanted a wide range of voices, a wide range of library workers, those with masters, those without masters, working in all sorts of libraries, community college research institutions, in all sorts of departments. And so we spread that call out across as many listservs as we could think of. And as the papers came in and the proposals came in, they just sort of, I don't know, kind of naturally reflected the whole of library services. We got information literacy, chapters and ideas, outreach, collection development. The one thing that was a little bit lacking was the archives. We wanted archives represented, so we put out another call for that, looking specifically for that, and those came in. And after that, that's how we arranged the book, is sort of thinking of like-minded departments, and putting that sort of collecting those together and arranging the book that way. I don't know. And Isabel, what else?
I think it's important to note that as Summer and I were working on this, we're actually very intentional. So Summer reaching out to me, we did have, we didn't know each other. This is how we met, actually. We didn't know each other at all. We met through her reaching out and saying, hey, we kind of need this in our profession. But through it all, one of the things that I brought up to her, and she totally agreed with, it was something she was thinking about too, is the fact that we wanted it to be very representative. If we're looking at working within this particular population, we wanted to be sure that the population itself, that community was well represented. So when we did our call for papers, we were very intentional in putting that call for papers out, in ensuring that it was going out to librarians of color and Latina librarians. And so we were very intentional in putting that call for papers out to the Spectrum Scholarship community, the We Hear community, and to those caucuses within ALA, in wanting to make sure that the voices heard within this book were representative. And I think we have both been incredibly proud of the fact that we did do that. We did, we do have an amazing representation of voices within this book, which, as we know, for our profession, is a rare thing, right? I mean, it's 85% white. We very much are the minorities in this group, and especially if you look at librarians of color, and then you start breaking them down among the different communities. The numbers just get smaller and smaller. So we were very intentional about doing that, and I think we really did accomplish that, and that was incredibly important for us. But because of that, our contributors, our authors, they were amazing in trusting us with their work. There's a lot of trust that is involved in handing somebody your work and saying, okay, edit it, tell me what's good and what isn't. There's an insane amount of trust that goes into that, and they trusted us. And I am forever grateful. As Summer said, this is my first book. This is my first large work. At the time when she reached out to me, I was a brand new baby librarian in my first academic job, my first professional librarian job. And she said, you know what, we can do this. I've got some of the background experience. I've published before. You've got some of the places where you can, we can call for people. You've got the lived experience, having been, I got my undergrads at an HSI, and then I was working at that same at HSI, Colorado State University in Pueblo. So I had that background already of having both those sides of experience with HSIs. And so we went for it, and honestly, this feels like a baby. Being a mom, like this very much feels like a baby. It's like, this incredible piece of work. And yes, as Summer said, a lot has changed since we started this. We actually started 2020. Library Juice Press took us on in 2021. But in that time, I mean, there's, some of us have been sick. I had surgery on my ankle. We have switched jobs. We have moved. Like a lot has happened in between. I think for everybody, that these have been years of kind of craziness and turmoil with pandemic and COVID going on. But at the end of the day, I'm really proud of the book that we put out. And I think, I thank our contributors and our authors so much, because they are doing amazing work out there. Just incredible, amazing work out there. And, I honestly, I couldn't be more thankful to them.
Yeah, yes, agreed. And I think this book could even have a sequel and a third and a fourth and a fifth too.
Absolutely.
I feel like this book will inspire a lot of people to either take these programs that they read about or create new ones. So today we have lucky to have some authors with us, some contributors. I think there's about 6 chapters represented. And Franco, who did our book design, is also here, who's going to talk about that. That was a really exciting part of putting this book together.
Amazing work.
And so for the panelists, Nelson is not here. He had a library emergency. So if you were after Nelson, you're not after Nelson anymore. But I mean, anything else, or shall we turn it over, Isabel, or?
Let's turn it back over to Annie, and she can guide us on where to go.
Okay.
All right. I think, Franco, you are up next.
Hi, everyone. Great. I'm gonna try to share my screen really quick again. A little slideshow. Let's see. This is working.
Franco, while you get that up and going, I just want to say the process of working with this with Franco was amazing. Like Franco got this book on a level that we just we couldn't imagine. He did such amazing work, and I actually asked him for a picture that I could print, because I'm like, my first book, I'm framing this thing because it is absolutely gorgeous. Franco, thank you so much.
Of course, it was such a pleasure to work with you, Isa, and with Summer. So I just wanted to start off saying thank you to you both for reaching out and for believing the process, because it takes a while to do a cover, and to Library Juice Press also for bringing me on. Yeah, I just wanted to speak briefly about the process of the cover. I'm going to try to keep it short because this was over the span of several weeks that we worked together. But yeah, I'm just as a kind of heads up, I'm an illustrator from Argentina, but I'm based right now in Rhode Island. I was based in New York before, and over time moved over here. But yeah, it was really exciting when I received this project from Isabel and Summer, because we had a couple of different conversations about what they were interested in doing and what the book was all about. And finding ways to convert that into images is basically what my day-to-day job is. I work a lot with newspapers and magazines to conceptualize texts and articles and that kind of work. So this is no stretch in regards to what I usually do, but it was a very different challenge to work with a book and to think about a collection of essays that all have very different kind of voices in it of themselves, and how do we bring those together in a cover that feels cohesive for all of them, but also represents kind of what the book is about and what we're trying to get at. So I wanted to start off just showing you a few of the covers that didn't make it. So these are a few of the thumbnails that we started off looking at. And I remember in one of our conversations with Isabel and Summer, we spoke a lot about libraries. And I think one of the kind of sentiments that stood out to me when I was thinking about this cover is the idea of libraries not just as a place where books live and where we go to read books, but also as a place that are fundamental for community building and for serving and for coming together as a whole. So I thought this was a very beautiful kind of way to think about it and a way to think about libraries that hadn't integrated. So my challenge was to find a way that, once again, incorporating the content of the book while also holding true to that kind of idea of like, how do we look at libraries in a different way that is not just this place that, you know, holds books and where people usually go and sometimes often is neglected and often underfunded, as I'm sure you all are more aware about than I am. But I thought it was a great way to kind of start. So these are a few of the kind of thumbnail sketches that we thought about, of which we then started kind of reviewing and kind of developing a little bit more. So they became a little bit more into color studies, and some of these usually involve more imagery, some of them are more type heavy. But one of the main things as an illustrator too that I was challenging myself with is this idea that just as in spoken language and in written language, we also have visual stereotypes that hold true or that are unfortunately very prevalent in our day-to-day. So some of the most common kind of visual stereotypes that come about when we think about Latinx and you know, Hispanic communities is this idea of like maybe floral, tropical vegetation, and a lot of things that I personally, as an illustrator, see very often used, but often don't really represent, in my opinion, the, you know, the kind of overarching experiential cultural visual language that we have in Latin America. And having been raised in Argentina, in Paraguay, in Colombia, I've had a few of like different types of exposures to visual culture throughout South America. So it was exciting to think of ways that we can bring those together. So based on these kind of sketches, the sketch that we arrived to is the sketch that you now see in the cover, that is featuring all these different kind of scenes from college life of a Hispanic, Latina, and Latinx students, showcasing a variety of ways and also kind of like making nudges to different areas of Latina culture. Here you can see a couple of different color studies where we're reviewing like different colors that we could use for the cover until we arrive to the final artwork. And the idea as well was that each of these vignettes could potentially work as its own book cover. And just as like this book itself holds a bunch of different voices and wonderful authors and editors, we wanted each one of these images kind of to allude to this collection of different voices coming together, as well as representing, you know, the whole variety of races, genders within the Latina community, and also different nudges to culture, like thinking about introducing like a very famous book cover, like the cover of 100 Years of Solitude, or Waju backs in Colombia, very popular, or having a mate in there that is very common in the Southern Hemisphere. So different nudges to culture that perhaps somebody that's not familiar with Latina culture might not notice, but then becomes aware of once they get more acquainted with it. So this was the final look of the cover that we arrived to. And again, I'm very grateful for, you know, the opportunity to get to work on this, and I'm very excited to be in the scope with all of you. So congratulations to all of you. And I was very happy to get to contribute in this way to your amazing work. So yeah, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Franco. And then up next is Isabel.
All right, so I'm back. So for the first chapter, one of the things that Summer and I really discussed and that I really wanted to put out there with this book is that, you know, there's a lot of misconceptions about the terminology, about what it means to be Hispanic or what it means to be Latina, about terminology like Latina or Latinx or Afro-Latina. You know, a lot of people think, you know, Hispanic or Latina is a race. It's not. There's these ideas of what we're supposed to look like. Not all of us do. And, you know, just sort of really kind of approaching it from a point of what are the narratives within the Hispanic community as well as outside of it? How did Hispanic even come to be in the US, and what does it mean? You know, that a lot of these conversations are actually happening within the Latina community itself. And so, you know, I wanted people to really understand that being Hispanic is not just one thing, being Latina is not just one thing. And that these two things, some people can be both Hispanic and Latina, but not everybody is both. You know, a lot of people think being Hispanic or Latina is, you know, distinctly all about the language. But when you have the language, how many people are you leaving out? You know, how many people are you leaving out of the conversation because they speak their indigenous languages and not Spanish? How many people are you leaving out, like, you know, Argentina and Brazil, who speak Portuguese? Are they any less Latina than everybody else out there? No, they're not. And so I wanted people to really kind of understand that dichotomy of the Latina population, and also understand that, you know, we're not all the same. You know, everybody, when it comes to doing those programs, it's always about Cinco de Mayo and Taco Tuesday. Do you know how many different things are to be celebrated among this community? How many, you know, we have a lot of things in common, a lot of really beautiful things in common. But even within those commonalities, there are such beautiful differences and such beautiful diversity. And I wanted people to explore that. So that first chapter is sort of delving into those areas. It's a primer. It is by no means a full, you know, know all end all chapter, but it is a primer. It is an introduction into some of those dichotomies. How did, you know, yes, we are, you know, to in the US, we are, you know, one group to everybody, but yet within that group, we're treated differently by many of the laws, specifically the immigration laws, that, you know, depends on the country that you're from, in the ways that we have been treated, in, you know, that a lot of the times that pits us against each other, you know. And it's also understanding how we refer to ourselves, right? You notice I'm using the word, the phrase Latina a lot, as opposed to Latinx. You know, a lot of us don't even identify necessarily as, you know, from being, you know, Hispanic or Latina, and rather we identify with the country that we have a connection with. A lot of times it goes even more granular than that. We identify with the place from that country that we're from. So, you know, simply putting us under one umbrella is really not always the way to go. I also discuss a little bit, you know, HSIs. Yes, having a group, you know, having that monolithic group created in the US, it brought a lot of power to this community and created things like Hispanic serving institutions. But, you know, that's not always the perfect answer to, you know, ensuring that you are serving your students in the right way. So really that first chapter is really just sort of an introduction into what it is, into the community that you are trying to serve when you are at a Hispanic serving institution, or even if you're not, you may still have a large population of Hispanic and Latina students within your institution, but you might not have that designation, and it's okay to not have that designation. You are still serving a very important population. So that's the first chapter of this book.
All right. And then up next we have Brittany.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Paloma Fiedler, and my pronouns are she, her, ella. And my co-author, Nikki Fulmer, couldn't be here today, but I want to give her a shout out because our chapter is really because of her, an idea she had as an MLIS student. She had graduated from UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, which is a Hispanic serving institution, a minority serving institution. We like to brag about how diverse we are. We're often tied for #1 for most diverse. And she had gone from that undergrad experience, which I had also had, to a predominantly white institution for her MLIS program, which is an experience I also had. And she wanted to do a research project as a graduate student at UNLV, talking to Latinx students. So we started with a survey, which we wrote a paper about, but this book chapter focused on our interviews. So we were able to interview 15 students magically, all in person in February of 2020. So like we really, I mean, and now I'm like, I don't even know if this chapter means anything anymore, because I think the experience of students is so different, you know, in a post-pandemic, well, it's still a pandemic for me because I have a lot of health issues, but in a ongoing pandemic life. And but I feel like this is a beautiful time capsule of what it was like to be a Latinx student in 2020 in the libraries. And one of the things that was the most heartening in our research was seeing how many experiences students had had in their public and school libraries. We really started from the beginning, like, tell me about your first experience in a library. Like, tell me about, do you remember going to the public library as a kid? Do you remember going to school libraries as a kid? And they had these really wonderful experiences there. And then we see a drop off, in middle and high school of public and school library usage, and identifying as readers, like as a person who reads. And then at UNLV, they're using the space a lot. We're a commuter campus. Only 8% of our students live on campus. So they're physically in the library a lot, but they're not frequently talking to staff workers. But I think it's good to keep in mind that, they have these really positive, warm experiences of libraries and librarians and library workers. And then they come to the university and it feels so different. University libraries, as soon as you walk in aesthetically, it feels different than a lot of public and school libraries. And that made them reluctant to ask for help. And so we're very lucky that our students are in our space, but they're not often using our services or realizing the kind of help that staff members can give them. And based on that, we have been really ramping up the kind of resource pushing that we're doing in our library, which is wonderful. The other thing that's really interesting, I haven't read this chapter in a long time, I reread it obviously for this, is just seeing, even at UNLV, where students look around and they see students who look like them, who have very similar experiences. A third of our students are non-traditional students. Our faculty is more diverse than a typical faculty. So at UNLV, only 65% of our tenured and tenure track faculty are white, compared to nationally, that's usually 76%. So like the experience of physically being on campus and looking around, you're in a community that feels like very familiar, but they still don't feel like they belong. And so our chapter title, Is It For Me? Alienation, Assimilation, and Ambition in Academia, really came from those students who just are like, even they feel so successful, they feel so lucky to be in the university environment, to be doing research, to be thriving, to be living out their parents' and their ancestors' dreams for them. But they look around campus and it just feels so different. It doesn't feel like a super welcoming place. And I think probably for librarians, one of the more interesting takeaways is we asked students, where do you go for research help? And of the 15, I mean, they just really didn't say librarians. 9 of them said they would talk to their professors, and the other ones talked about going to their classmates, going to tutoring, even going to their academic advisors. Yeah, and when they talked about their interactions with staff members, they were all positive. Like those who had interacted with library staff were really positive, but they always felt a little bit bad about having to do that kind of interaction. So they would be like, oh, they were so nice to me, even though my question was probably stupid. Or, oh, they didn't treat me like I was dumb. And they were like so helpful. And that's what they're expecting, right? So as a person who works the reference desk, my most frequently asked question is how to print. But whenever they come up, I'm always like very like, oh my gosh, that's such a great question. Printing here is really confusing and it doesn't make sense. Like, let's walk you through it. Yeah, so for us, it was a really exciting opportunity to be a part of this chapter and to be sharing our experiences with everyone. And we tried to really differentiate that, there isn't an umbrella Latinx experience. And trying to make sure that we were talking to students about their other identities, and trying to really figure out how that influenced their experiences. But we have a lot of recommendations in our chapter, so if you haven't read it, highly recommend. I know we all just got the book pretty recently, so I haven't read everybody else's chapters quite yet. But we have, as we break down our research and their quotes and our analysis, we have a lot of recommendations for how you can interact with students and improve services and try to make it a more welcoming environment. And some of the things that I'm really excited about, students really didn't, even though we have really great diverse exhibits, mostly from our special collections, because Las Vegas has such a diverse community, they did not interact with them at all because most of them are really like kind of tucked away in other parts of the library. And I pushed so hard to get a book display so that way we could kind of have it right as you walk in, have different kinds of book displays and that are really culturally responsive and interesting. And we finally got it 4 years later. I know that sounds wild to not have a book display in a library, but we don't. And we're super excited because our first display is going to be just Latinx fiction of the 2020s. Just really highlighting that there's like great contemporary fiction happening. Um, and we have it in our library and try to get people something new and exciting to read that reflects their various identities. And hopefully that's a way to be like, oh, wow, cool. Like I'd never heard of this Argentinian writer, or I had never heard of, this Cuban poet, and give students a chance to, see themselves and see their voices out there. So that's like, it's such a small thing that feels kind of silly saying it out loud, but it's something that we didn't have. And I think that being able to go to our library dean and be like, hey, we did this research, like, this is why we want it. Can we please have it help to motivate that purchasing decision? Because as we all know, the economy for libraries is very tough right now. Yeah, and yeah, that's kind of it. Our book chapter is about to be deposited in our institutional repository, so it's open access. And I would like to shout out Library Juice Press for letting us, do that. Not a lot of publishers will let you do that. And the other half of our research is also available open access. So if anyone is interested, they can always Google our names and find the stuff that we're talking about if the book hasn't hit your shelves yet. Although I do highly recommend, of course, that you put in a purchase order.
Awesome. Thank you, Brittany. And then up next, we have Sally.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sally Nahara Romero, and I'm here with one of my co-authors, Elizabeth Gomez Hernandez. And we're missing one of our authors, Liz Loera. She couldn't make it with us today, but we're so happy to talk about our chapter. Chapter 3 is coming together as a comunidad, sharing our Latinx stories and culture. And so we put this chapter together to talk about our experience with creating and co-partnering with our Cesar E. Chavez Center for Higher Education, and really putting together programming to highlight the voices of our Latine, Latinx, Latino librarians and library staff. And so this was an event that we put together in fall 2020. And just so you know, we're part of the California State University system. So we're at Cal Poly Pomona. Well, I'm still at Cal Poly Pomona. Elizabeth is now at UCI, and Alyssa is at the Getty. So we've kind of dispersed a little bit, but so in fall 2020, we put together a program, collaboration with Chemnitz partners on talking about our experiences as just being Latine, Latinx, Latino. And we recruited some of our library staff. So the three of us being the only Latinx librarians, Latino librarians at Cal Poly Pomona. We recruited some of our staff, and what we did is we put together a program that highlighted our culture and our stories, down to how we started our undergrad to our, some of us are graduate, and how we got here at Cal Poly, really going into our historical background of who we are. And so with this event, we did it online, so it was a webinar, and we were able to share our stories individually. We would go through our trajectory of like how we came into academic settings, but mostly really to talk about who we were. And this was an opportunity to give students a way to see themselves through us, that we do exist. We are an HSI, we're an Anapesia as well. And so it really allowed us to open up about ourselves. This experience was so wonderful for us as panelists, because it really got we got a chance to see ourselves even within employees. So I got to learn a lot about Alyssa. I got to learn a lot about Elizabeth and our other panelists, Mary Lou and Jaime. And so we really got to learn about our cultures. We got really great feedback. This was the first time that this kind of event had ever happened in our university library. And so from there, we continued to create more programming during Latinx Heritage Month. So we would do pop-up displays for resources, as well as like now we continue to do loteria events and that are specialized within the library. So loteria like bingo, but instead of the traditional, we have adjusted it to be library related themes like books. So we say libros, right? Or, printing, all of it is in Spanish. And so this really has allowed us to expand a little bit more on programming that we do because we are about 49% Hispanic Latinx students at Cal Poly Pomona. And we thought this was a great opportunity to partner with other campus colleagues and really showcase who we are as individuals first, because I think that's what we really needed, was us to be able to work together and reflect on the kind of the hidden ability to talk about ourselves, right? I think a lot of times in higher education, we're just here to do our job when really we're not being seen as a person. And that felt really important to us during this Hispanic Heritage Month to really showcase who we are as individuals so that our students can see us. And I'll let Elizabeth talk a little bit more about the experience.
Thank you, Sally. Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Hernandez, and I am the research librarian at UC Irvine now. And it were just a couple of things that I wanted to say is thank you to Sally for spearheading all of this and taking leadership through a lot of the events that we had. And I just want to highlight the importance of having people around you in your job that are willing to include you and collaborate with you and also share credit for these type of events and this type of work. And it was really a privilege to share our personal stories with our colleagues and students as well. And as Sally mentioned before, we are no longer working together, but we have, this is one of the great working relationships that I really cherish. And I'm so glad that we have something to document all of the hard work that we did during that time. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sally and Elizabeth. Alrighty, up next we have Liz.
Hello, my name is Liz Tioli Thomason, and I am excited. Oh, there you are, Alejandra. I'm also really excited because Alejandra Mendez is here as well. She is my writing partner. We did chapter 5, which has a very long title, so I'm just going to straight up read it. Estamos para servirte, enhancing and delivering online services to Hispanic and Latinx community college students. As with everybody else here, many things happened since the start of our adventure with this chapter and this book. Alejandra and I both worked together at Northern Essex Community College, and it has 2 campuses in Haverhill and Lawrence, Massachusetts. We both worked at actually both campuses at different times in the similar or the same role. But I am just going to call attention to the elephant in the room and say I am not Hispanic or of Latinx descent or identity. I am just going to say I'm an incredibly white woman. I am a first generation American, though. My mother immigrated from France when she was 3, so that's pretty awesome. But Alejandra and I worked together on a number of different initiatives, and being that we come from both very different backgrounds, Alejandra emigrated from Puerto Rico in 2020, late 2020. No, yep.
No,
Early, sorry.
January 1st, 2020.
Well, that could be late 2020. And please feel free to cut in here, Alejandra. So we had very different backgrounds and different experiences with working with diverse groups of individuals. I came to Northern Essex from working at Windward Community College on Oahu in Hawaii, which actually at the time that I was working there, we were arguing with you, I believe it was Nevada that said it, to be the most diverse community college when we were at Windward, when I was at Windward, I'm sorry. But moving to Massachusetts and specifically working at the Lawrence campus, which Lawrence, Massachusetts has one of the highest rates of immigrants coming from the Dominican Republic, and is also one of the continuously poorest towns or cities in the entire state, proved to be interesting and challenging in ways that I wasn't necessarily aware were happening. But because of different events that were going on in the world at that time, my interest was piqued and my awareness became much greater than it was. Alejandra and I, as I had said, we worked together on a number of different initiatives. I had started doing a collection audit for diverse materials. I had started doing a diversity audit of all of our research guides, and things like that started to inform my decision making and how I was actually interacting with my students to see what different challenges and trials and tribulations they were going through. Alejandra, again, please feel free to jump in at any time. She was the one who did get the call for papers for this particular project, and she invited me to participate because of the work that we've done together. Sorry, go ahead. I saw you unmuted.
So yeah, just like Liz has been saying, so like many of you, this occurred during the lockdown. So we came to, and so we both at the time worked. I was a floating librarian at the time. Liz was already in Lawrence, and one of the things that we had been during this time talking about is how to better serve our Spanish-speaking population, and most of our students, like Liz said, are directly coming from the Dominican Republic, or they were raised in Lawrence, which is one of the most Hispanic-centric towns in Massachusetts, and also the poorest. So many of our students in this specific campus in Lawrence struggle with English, and they take in courses in English as a second language. So actually, in the whole college around that time, the Hispanic/Latino population was, I believe, 43.60%, which is pretty high. And I cannot recall the percentage of Lawrence right now, which is why you should read the chapter. But at the time, I was the only Latina and Spanish-speaking person in the library, even though our staff it still is diverse. I no longer work there, but it does have a diverse staff. What else? What else did we do?
So one of the biggest and first projects that we worked on was creating materials that were bilingual. So I had started a Google video, or not a Google, excuse me, a YouTube video series on miscellaneous how-tos, like how to create footnotes, how to create hanging indents, some basic information based on one of our most popular research guides, which was the how to format your research paper. And Alejandra and I decided to do them in both English and Spanish and then put them together side by side to increase awareness. I'm actually going to share my screen. There's the button. Excuse me. So we decided to work on some of our research guides, create them both in English and Spanish, and then unfortunately, let's see, sorry, are we seeing the right? Yes, we are.
Yes,
So this was the primary one that we did. The citation guide was created by librarians who were there before us and was maintained by both of us. We decided to merge the English and Spanish sections. So as you can see here on the screen, we've got the English guide as well as the Spanish guide side by side so that we were able to increase visibility and also didn't have to worry about potentially forgetting to put a link in there. One link would take you to both the English and the Spanish guide. We unfortunately both left before we were able to fully complete this program or this project. The guides are still up and running, and I can't speak to if they're currently being maintained by a Spanish-speaking librarian, but they are still available. As you can see here, this is the Formatting Your Paper Guide. And I just learned about an hour ago, as I was preparing for this, that our Formatting Your Research Paper Guide has 75,000 views, 75,381 views, which is massive. And that should be for this year. I'm not sure if it's the academic year and it hasn't rolled over from 23-24 or if it's the calendar year. But either way, that's either January or September of last year, January of this year or September of last year. And so that means there are 75,000 hits on that. People just accessing the materials that they need in the language that they need and learning basic skills and how to use those to apply them to their whatever their definition of success is at their colleges, or not necessarily at their colleges, because these guides are available freely on the web. So this is work that both Alejandra and I are continuing in our current roles at our current colleges. She being the coordinator of library services and myself as the library director. I'm at a very small institution, allows us the opportunity to take this material and continue to share it out wider, because we purposely do all of this with a Creative Commons license, share and share alike. So it's just it's been incredibly helpful, and the librarians who are still at Northern Essex Community College, shout out to Laura Mont, who's currently in the attendees list, are very willing to help us continue to share this information and link back to it and get us any data that we do require. So I think that's it. Anything else from Alejandra?
So another thing, apart from like and I just remembered the original thing that prompted for us to specifically focus on publishing materials in Spanish, especially in LibGuides, which is the O2 Gold or favorite tool of librarians. And also doing signs. We after Liz left to fulfill her current role, the library invested its time in publishing sources in bilingual in their respective social media, such as Facebook and Instagram. Signs for activities, banners were also translated. I helped with that. Some of the sessions were also provided in Spanish to help students to better understand the library resources. So the program continued to expand. Again, this was until this year in February. I don't know if currently it's still going on, but this opened many, many doors for actually incorporating things that are pertinent to the community, especially in the Lawrence campus. So yes.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz and Alejandra. All right, up next we have Rose.
All right, can everyone hear me okay? Got it. Okay, so thank you so much to Summer and Isabel, and I have been here listening and nodding because I can relate to a lot that has been shared as far as, you know, feelings and during the pandemic, how this, what we all went through, right? But my name is Rose Marie Rodriguez. I'll start with that. I go by Rose, and I work at Northwest Vista College. I've been here since 2018, and it is part of the Alamo Colleges in San Antonio, Texas. We are an HSI, and my book chapter is NBC Zine Library, Teaching with Zines. And I'm so proud of this. So somebody mentioned, like, I think it was Isabel, like a baby, you know, you see it, you nurture it, you go back and forth, and you know, this was early on, and it's I'm feeling a lot of gratitude for one, for this. I feel fortunate to be a part of this. Submitting my proposal, it was the first time, and the feelings that I felt was fear. You know, I was scared, and my mind was telling me, you know, that narrative of um, I'm not going to get accepted. I'm not a good writer. This is awful. Oh my God, this is embarrassing. I don't even want to reread my chapter. But when I was going through it, it was just a reminder of the growth, you know, and how far I've come. And to talk a little bit about it, so when I started as a full-time, like, professional librarian in 2018, um, I had been working in libraries since 2019, and I started as a shelver. So I'm 40 now, so all I've known is libraries. My first professional position is as an academic librarian. I've always worked in schools or public libraries. And so this was just a new, you know, field for me and a new game. But yeah, I had the fear, but also the excitement, the challenge, and I hit the ground running with ideas. And um, so one was yeah, imposter syndrome is real. And I'm glad that I'm not alone and it's not only me. And today I like to say that, um, you know, I throw away that imposter syndrome out the door. Like, you know, I'm like, if you're not in my corner cheering me on, you know, get the F out of here, basically. And so um, I'm feeling like it feels really amazing to just be my authentic self today and know that there's no one like me and I matter. And that's one thing that I try to um, show students, to let them know that, you know, especially as Northwest Visa being an HSI, the questions that I try to remind myself, I have them on here, is how do we target the non-traditional students who may be less, you know, technology proficient? And how do we create a sense of belonging for our non-traditional students, especially in online spaces? So with zines, I first made my first zine, which is scary. I think back about seeing that blank paper, but it helped me, you know, just going for it, being creative again, because as a child, you know, I loved digging in the dirt. I loved drawing and coloring. And then there was a certain point where I became so judgmental, you know, critical of myself, that I just stopped, you know, I stopped creating. And, you know, making things and using things are a part of life. And so with zines, that is something that, you know, I show students that you have a story to tell and be yourself unapologetically. You know, starting with a how-to zine, or a lot of our students will do a career zine, and that's their first introduction to zine making. And then, you know, I'll discuss the history, but I do want to get into the chapter. So I talk about, you know, how Alamo colleges, we have our Alamo Promise program, And a lot of our students will come non-traditional, but young as well, in high school, dual credit. And I want them to know that they are already a part of the story. Like they, you know, it's not that, oh, I'll start my life once I graduate. No, it's happening now. And, um, with zines, I feel like it's just that gentle way of getting familiar with writing, physically writing. I tell them that it's very therapeutic I mean, I know I'm not the only one. There's research that says like pen to paper is spiritual. If you're feeling a certain way, there's also you might be familiar with morning pages, just writing things out. And so I encourage students to practice their writing skills through zines. Our zine library, we had our grand opening March. It was literally March 2020. It was that next week and we shut down. So we never had our grand opening. We had the postcards made and all. So, our collection is still small, but it's mighty. We have people we had a graduate researcher come and look at our zine collection, and it's growing. It's slowly growing. I also started with the information literacy mini zine series. Not having much experience with teaching, I felt like I was losing them. And so having this, a zine for them to take, if it's just informational on like the library, um, contact numbers, um, so that they can put in their wallet or their bag and have that physical zine. That's how I started with it. So our zine library is we catalog our zines. Um, It is the first zine library in a community college in Texas from the last time I checked. But this was, it's something that this experience right now, this book launch is making me just sit in it and feel it. The, being proud of myself and all of us as a collective of what we're doing and learning from each other, and that's what life is about. Also, I want to talk a little bit about how zines, starting campus conversations and creating positive change. I really advocate for mindfulness and compassion, and with zines I feel like students can have the opportunity to um, if it's something that they're passionate about, I tell them, if you want to share about, gardening tips or your favorite books, just start with a how-to guide. And that's usually how, when I do the zine workshops, we also do a Hallozine exhibit. And so it's growing. There are instructors that come and have starting to do zine assignments. So it's slowly growing. And it's a good way to promote identity for our students to explore that and integrating zines into pedagogy. That's all I can do is keep showing up, keep trying, keep promoting zines. And I think that for me, this book launch is just another hey, let's do it. Let's keep it going. I made a zine the other day. It was a student that donated a zine, and I'll share it real quick. So I made this zine based on the zine that they created. They were doing blind contour drawing, and that's what their zine was. So I titled it The Beautiful Complexities. The brain is amazing. Actually, it's complex. Thoughts, memories, emotions, squishy. I am learning every day, improving, falling back, than moving forward, but it's a challenge some days. You know, what am I good at? Whatever it is, I need to practice and persist. Thank you, Dexter, the author of they donated their zine to us, for sharing your zine, for creating, drawing, reaching out, being courageous, and being you. How can we relate to other people? Connections, stories, beliefs, values, and love. This zine was inspired by a fellow zinester, writer, human being, Dexter Fraud, and special thanks to Dexter, Linda Berry, and you. So I didn't put my timer on, and so I don't know when I'm going to be cut off, but I can talk a little bit more about the book chapter and how is that, Summer? Isabel, am I okay to talk a little bit more?
I think we should move on. I'm
Okay.
sorry, Rose. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
We
you.
have two more contributors and then a little time for questions, but
Thank you so
thanks.
much.
Great. Thank you, Rose. And I am excited for everyone to read all of the chapters that have been presented so far. So I think there's a lot of really great information and case studies in there. So up next, we have Veronica and Stephanie.
Hi all, I'm gonna share my screen if that's okay, and I'm gonna have Stephanie introduce us. Can everyone see that graphic? I'm seeing yes from Summer, thank you so much. All right, Stephanie, if you're able to, if not, I can take over, but give it a shot.
Thank you. Yeah, hi everyone. Really privileged to be part of this project. My internet seems to be iffy today, so if I freeze up, Veronica is just going to take over. But I'm going to give a really quick introduction. You can see the title there. Veronica and I are presenting. We also co-authored with our colleagues at Dominican University, Jill.
Oh, we're losing you, Stephanie. Oh, yeah. I can't read Stephanie's mind, but
Am I there, Veronica, or you want to go ahead?
She was highlighting our other librarians. So that was Molly Mansfield and Bambinex. So Molly was our instruction librarian. Jill was our access services librarian. And so our chapter was covering Rebecca Crown Library's commitment to the Latinx students through intentional inclusivity practices and through the development of culturally competent content. And then we used Day of the Dead as kind of our launching point to practice those things across our departments. One thing that I should highlight is that Dominican University's demographics for our students was extremely diverse, but for our staff and faculty, it was not. So sometimes creating buy-in or getting support for some of these initiatives was extremely difficult, or there were internalized barriers and backlash that happened later on. But what I was most excited about this was having it kind of explode in possibilities of people engaging in different perspectives and leveraging that into different experiences that they could make their own. So again, this kind of came through the development of the Learning Commons. So I was responsible for our makerspace called the Weather Tech Innovation Lab and our recording studio. And in 2020, Ministry had this ongoing Day of the Dead practice, but because of the pandemic, there was no real way to continue that celebration. They reached out to me, and then I went ahead and created a pop-up that practiced, safety guidelines during the pandemic. Everything was virtual. It launched a LibGuide. It launched other digital materials that engaged not only the students, but also their families. So making sure the materials were bilingual and approachable, and more importantly, relatable. Some accomplishments that happened here was, leading with cultural competency added a level of, again, engagement, intersectionality, and more importantly, self-reflection from those who were not part of a marginalized group to really approach the content that we were sharing with a more humanized
and universal lens. One thing that the Day of the Dead practice did was highlight the humanity and community by kind of exploring the universal experience of grief. So in 2020, that was an extremely high theme, which led to a lot of different narratives. And so it wasn't just, oh, we're doing a program that's diverse. It was like diversity within diversity. There was a lot of intersectionality we were exploring. So we were very excited about that. So there was buy-in from the community. And then the development of that was inviting all community members to an informative event. It was really important for me to engage with ministry to ensure that those trips to the National Mexican Art Museum in Chicago, specifically in Pilsen, were happening to ensure that the students understand the indigenous practice of Day of the Dead. And then also kind of highlight the important materials to make sure that we weren't pandering to our audience, right? Making sure that they knew the intentionality behind it. And that laid a lot of common ground for students to be transparent about their experience, or if they were students who were of a background that did celebrate Day of the Dead or only heard of it, and this was their first time exploring it on campus, that was really exciting for us. I remember maybe our second or third year, I had a student's parent reach out and be like, I've been trying to tell them about Day of the Dead and they want to participate. And, you know, sometimes it's just interacting with another community that that they're not a part of inherently that expands their minds. So that was always nice to hear. And then some outcomes while the chapter was happening was English and Spanish Day of the Dead research guides, campus-wide participation as a new practice for Day of the Dead. We had multiple campus partners throughout, and one of the most beautiful things that I experienced through this programming, in these two pictures, you could see the students and a mariachi band leading them from ofrenda to ofrenda on campus. And then we also had a minister on campus who was blessing each ofrenda. So here we are in front of the reading room. That second photo below and the one above it is right at the heart of the Learning Commons, really guiding them through all of these spaces. More importantly, though, because of our student demographic, this kind of intentional practice led the library to have more unique opportunities in cultivating partnerships on and off campus, as well as creative assignments and cultural assignments / workshops that encourage engagement from first-generation students. So really honing in on the practice of representation and how much it matters. This led to a partnership in the recording studio to develop a identity through digital story assignment practice that happened throughout the semester. That was really exciting. And then again, here you could see in the top photo that was our pandemic practice. This was being filmed so we can go ahead and launch it to the community to let them know that we were still engaging in this level of inclusivity and intentional practice. And the two below is the one you could see where it was post-pandemic, people were back on campus, and again, tying it all together. And you can see the vibrance and engagement and the differences between those two. Some outcomes post 2021, what was really exciting, again, because we were branching out with this idea, and again, the underlying tones in all of this was a cultural competent practice, being intentional, leveraging different perspectives. We started to bring in faculty and staff and administration that was really seeing the impact of these programs and these initiatives. So on the left, you'll see a picture from our Logan Square community event in Chicago. So this included some representation from DePaul, from Latino organizations throughout the Chicago area, and of course, Dominican itself. And then on the right, we could see how the library was starting to lean into more representation efforts. Once they saw the impact of this kind of programming, they started to fill the library up with cultural arts. So we moved some of the European structured materials that we had in there and started adding more indigenous art into the space. We also started to exhibit careful curated exhibits that highlighted intersectionality. And then again, we hired a community artist to paint a heritage mural in the library. And in Dominican's words, this mural is a symbol of diversity and community, the mural which gradually revealed itself in the library. So that being said, I can't say if Dominican is still doing that just now because I am now in a predominantly white institution in Granville, Ohio. But something that I have been doing since we had such success in making sure that our practice for Day of the Dead, mobilizing the community through intersectional practice and intention and cultural competency, has been modeled in Logan Square. It worked there, and now I'm setting a foundation here at Denison University, which again is predominantly PWI. And some things that I want to mirror back really quickly is, like most of you, I am also first gen. There was a lot of imposter syndrome there. So I want to give a shout out to Stephanie for unveiling this kind of intimidating and, you know, to me, very puzzling procedure of publication, washing any negative thoughts about this not being worth publishing. The other thing is, again, some things that were left out were some of the messiness that can come in of, like, you know, creating buy-in and invisible barriers that you might engage in a predominantly homogenous space. So if anybody wants to connect over that, I'd be happy to do so and share some transparency there. And then to let you know how it's working at a PWI. And then one more call to action is, I'm in a PWI, please connect with me. I miss representation. So please feel free to connect either to brainstorm things about inclusive programs, maybe some more of the spider legs that this kind of practice highlighted. And yeah, I'm gonna pass it to Stephanie one more time, just in case your audio works.
Thank you, Veronica, for carrying the entire presentation. It was fabulous working with Veronica, and I'm so glad that she's been able to carry some of these ideas to her new institution. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.
Great. Thank you, Veronica and Stephanie. Last but not least, we have Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone. I'm really happy and excited to be here, learning a lot. Looking forward to connecting after this session. And I'm going to show you two short clips and talk a little bit about the work.
The library at the Center for Puerto Rican Studies is one of the organization's earliest and greatest achievements. It was among the first tasks undertaken after Centro's founding in 1973. By 1974, the collection had already become one of the most complete collections covering the subject of Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans in New York City. Shortly after this goal was established, Tony Betancourt took leave from Hostos Community College Library to lay the foundations for Centro's library. In 1975, Nelida Perez became Centro's first and only librarian at the time. Building the library was a community effort. While also learning how to run a library themselves, staff leaned on their community for materials and real-life accounts that would eventually shape the library.
So my chapter is titled, it was co-written by Centro librarian Aníbal Arrocho and Centro researcher Dr. Raquel Ortiz, who's also a children's author, an author of children's books. And the title of our chapter is Centro Library Archives Bring Resources for Students and Educators in Hispanic Serving Institutions. Now, one thing that I also resonated with me that Isabel mentioned is, in talking about the terminology of Hispanic serving, Latine, Latinx, and how institutions become labeled such as. And one of the things that we learned one of the things that inspired me to write in my part of writing the chapter was the fact that Hunter College, where Centro is housed in, and Hunter being part of the CUNY system, City University of New York system, Hunter became a Hispanic serving institution, unlike many other of the institutions of the schools in the United States by default. And by that, I mean that it's not housed in a predominantly Hispanic area. And so over the course of time, it has become a Hispanic serving institution. But for myself, working there for a number of years, that was not something that jumped out in the hallways. You know, there's a great representation of many other groups. And I think if you were to ask many people at the university at Hunter if we are a Hispanic serving institution, they would wonder. It wouldn't be an automatic response of yes. And so that questions the work that educators do in a different way, because I think because it's not something at the forefront, people may not be thinking about how to include Hispanic culture, history, Latin culture, history, and ways of being into the curricula. I also want to take a second to thank, of course, Summer and Isabel for continuing the big fight of bringing this book into fruition and keeping us well informed throughout the process. I know that this was a labor of love, and I really want to acknowledge that. And so I have my notes here. Also, as Brittany mentioned, Hunter is a school where a commuter school, and I see in the building that the library becomes a hub for students to meet, but not necessarily to take advantage of the resources of the librarians. And I have worked with a number of librarians within the system, and I've noticed also that it's an aside, right? The librarian is there, but it's not somebody that you think of first when you're thinking. Even myself as a researcher, it's taking me a long time to develop the practice where I see the librarian as one of my first go-to people. And so part of writing this chapter was to highlight the connection between building content, creating community, helping students feel a sense of empowerment in being in schools by connecting to the librarians. And in Centro in particular, initially, when I learned about Centro as a student, the Central Library was inside of the Hunter Library. It was tucked in a corner off to the side, but it was nonetheless inside of the library. And over the course of time, the library was moved to another building geographically very far from the main campus. And even within this new location is also tucked into the corner. So what does that say about how we view the resources of Centro within a Hispanic serving institution? So that's a question that I'm posing out there. And let's see if I left any. And one of the other things that I want to highlight is that CUNY has a low retention and low graduation rates for Latina students. And so all of these points that I'm making are what drove the impetus to become part of this book and write the chapter and highlight the contributions and all the resources for whatever course you're teaching that can tap into the Latino, Latina experience through the lens of Puerto Ricans in the United States. And I'm gonna finish my section by sharing a second video.
One of the key initiatives of Centro has been the development and maintenance of an extensive archival collection, which documents the Puerto Rican experience in the United States from the early 20th century to the present day. Photographs, manuscripts, oral histories, and more offer unique insights into the social, cultural, and political history of Puerto Ricans in the U.S., as well as their contributions to American society. In recent years, Centro's archival collections have become even more important as the Puerto Rican community faces new challenges. The archives provide a valuable resource for researchers and policymakers who are working to address these issues and improve the lives of Puerto Ricans in the United States and the archipelago. The archives are a critical resource for understanding and expanding the Puerto Rican experience in the United States. They serve as a testament to the contributions of the Puerto Rican community, providing a foundation for future research, scholarship, and advocacy.
Find the share button. It's hidden somewhere, but I'm done with my presentation and I'm looking forward to speaking with you all as we move on.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. And I really loved the videos too. Those are really nicely done. So with the remaining time that we have left, we have a Q&A as well as a raffle. So I'm going to pass things over to Ariana to moderate the Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks, Annie. It was great to hear from all the contributors, and I look forward to reading more of your sections as well. If there are any additional questions, please feel free to add them to the Q&A section right now. So the first question we'll start with is from Alicia Long. It says, curious, does the book have any chapters, articles related to LAS education or the preparation of academic librarians or Latine LIS students / librarians? So I think that could be for Summer or Isabel, maybe, if you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Go ahead, Summer.
Go ahead. That's a great question, and I wish, but you can expound.
Yeah, specifically to the training of librarians, no. But I would argue honestly that those first 4 chapters, that first section, foundations, would be actually a good introduction to people getting their LIS. You know, there's always the diversity classes that you have, you know, in every LIS program now. And I think, you know, starting with those first 4 chapters would be a great introduction to a lot of people. It's really hard to, you know, train, you know, specifically one group, because at the end of the day, we all have to be able to serve everyone. But we also have to be culturally aware and culturally responsive to the people that we are serving. And so, you know, that I feel like that would be a whole other book in and of itself. But I do think that everything that is offered within this book could be used in that way as well, not just for those of us already in the profession, but for those of us who want to be a part of the profession.
Awesome, thank you. Alicia said that's great to know. Thank you. The examples are great for LAS students. Okay, so our next question, it's a 2-parter. So I think the first half is probably open to the panelists, and then the second half seems more for Summer and Isabel. So for the first half, in what ways do you believe the representation of Latina and Latinx voices in academic libraries can transform the educational experience for students from these communities? And then second half is, what specific challenges did you encounter in bringing this publication to fruition?
I'll answer this one first, just because of the first part of that question. I can tell you that for me, there's something about seeing myself represented out there that is incredibly important. I you know, just like many of our contributors and many of the people here, I am a first generation. I am an immigrant. Spanish is my native language. It is my first language. And, you know, even though I clearly have become quite assimilated into this country, it is incredibly important for me. And it's almost emotional for me when I see that I'm being represented, that my people are being represented, that something is being done with a certain level of care. And so having people represented in this book, it meant that, you know, for everyone out there reading about this, that they're taking the time to learn and to pass along these programs and these types of services to people from a standpoint of, I want to do right by you. Right? Like that is so incredibly important that people are going to take the time to look through this book and come up with ideas and learn about them from people who have been there, not just as librarians, but as people who have lived these experiences and who have lived the experiences that our students are having. And, you know, you may not fall within those groups yourself, but to have taken the care to ensure that you are learning from somebody who has, and you are taking those lessons and in order to try and really serve somebody. I think that there's an incredible importance in that. And I think for students, seeing themselves in that way is incredibly important. I mean, I can tell you, you know, I am in a PWI myself, predominantly Y institution. We do have quite a few Hispanic students, though we have not reached the HSI level. And I have my little sign out that says, you know, right here, you know, hablo español. I put this up anytime I'm tabling anywhere. And, you know, the amount of students that come up to me just because of that, you know, I think seeing yourself as a representative for students is incredibly important. And so in wanting to do this book in order to share these experiences with others, it was incredibly important that those voices were represented so that we are all learning from each other in a very culturally aware and responsible way. As for me, what the hardest part was honestly, I think having to pick and choose. We had so many wonderful ideas, and the scope of this book could have really gotten out of hand because we had such wonderful ideas. And so we really had to sit down and be like, okay, who are the people that we are trying to reach with this book? And we knew early on that that was going to be academic librarians. And, you know, as Summer said in the beginning, there's a lot of literature out there for public librarianship, but not a lot within the subject for academic librarians. And so we had a lot of ideas that were amazing, but we were like, it does not fit the scope of this book. So having to, you know, say no to some of those ideas was really hard. It was also really hard going through the editing process because, you know, you're being trusted with somebody's work, right? Somebody is giving you their work and saying, okay, judge it. And that's, I mean, that is so intimidating and that is so scary. You know, it was mentioned earlier, yes, the imposter syndrome is very real in all of us, very real in all of us. And, you know, that was really hard for me. But I think that, or at least I'm hoping that at least that made me a little bit more sensitive in terms of doing that. But those parts for me were really, really hard in having to really kind of, you know, narrow down the scope and having to say no to a few people and in having to kind of go back to people and be like, okay, well, you know, we need to fix this here or fix that there, or, you know, narrow the scope here. You know, but I'm honestly, I'm really proud of what wound up coming out of this book. I think, you know, I'm so proud of all the contributors. I mean, everybody here, you know, I'm so glad many of you got, you know, all of you got past the, is this important enough? Because yes, all of your work is important. All of your book work is amazing. And I am so honored that you trusted us with that.
Awesome. Thanks,
Summer, I think it's your
Isabel.
turn.
Sorry, really quickly, I just wanted to recognize we have about a minute left in the webinar. Time flies.
Okay.
So I just wanted to share really quickly that we did do a raffle of all the participants too. So the raffle winners are Kenny Garcia and Nicolette Davis. I'll be contacting both of you for your free copies. Free copies. Look forward to that. And Summer and Isabel, I don't know if you wanted to wrap it up really quickly.
I just want to say thank you and I appreciate your time and I'm so thrilled by this. And if you want to celebrate more, I would love to join you in that and hear about all your future accomplishments also.
Yeah, same here. I would love to hear from everyone. And you know, if there's any other questions or anything else, you know, I'm more than happy to connect with anybody that wants to connect. You know, super excited about this book. I've been over the moon, you know, since it's come out, and you know, again, super excited about everyone that participated in it. Y'all are wonderful. You really are. Thank you.
Great. With that, I think just a really quick question. I believe there was also a friends and family discount code that was also set aside for this webinar, but I don't remember what the code is off the top of my head. Someone wanted to just share that with the audience.
I think it's Crib Live Latine, but let me double check on that really quick.
Yeah. Well, it is that, but in different order. I'll put it in the chat.
Oh, there we go. Latina Crit Lib.
Great. And I think a link was also shared in the registration to purchase the book, and you can use the code to get, I believe it's like a 20% discount. Yeah, excellent. All right, well, thank you, everyone. It was so wonderful to hear everybody.
It's a 30% discount, even better.
Oh, wait, yes, better to be even more of a discount, 30%. So for attending this webinar today, you get a 30% discount code. So, and hopefully we can also share that out with folks who had to leave earlier too. So great. Well, thanks all.
Thank you so much.
Afternoon.